Hello, my name is Dr. Claire Mallinson and I'm Director of Medical Education here at Guy's and St Thomas's.
Hello, and I'm Dr. Ros Tilley and I'm the Guardian of Safe Working for the Trust. We're here today to talk to you about the new Trainees Contract 2016 and your role as Educational Clinical Supervisors as the Foundation Doctors go on to this contract at the beginning of December. So what's new in this contract compared to the contract that you've been familiar with? We're going to be looking at working hours, work scheduling, exception reporting, which is replacing diary carding, and my role as the Guardian of Safe Working. The new contract has a very large number of rules that are governing the hours of working of your doctors in training, and I won't go into them in detail, but we could provide you with a link to a fact sheet around those hours. But one of the key things I'm going to focus on now is the changing role of annual leave. Previously you may have had fixed annual leave in a rota, and that is now not permitted in the new contract. You are allowed to have a minimum number of people who must remain on the rota, so a maximum number of trainees who can be on annual leave at any one time, but you're expected to make reasonable arrangements to enable trainees to have a flexible annual leave. The situation with rest and breaks, the rest between shifts should be a minimum of 11 hours, and breaks during shifts has changed. Now if a shift is longer than 5 hours, a 30-minute break is provided, and if it's longer than 9 hours, an additional 30 minutes should be provided. Now those can be bundled together into an hour-long lunch break, for example, but it can't be given as an hour at the end of a shift and to go home an hour early. That is not permitted. So, in the new contract, the trainees will have received a generic work schedule sometime about the beginning of October, 8 weeks before they move on to the contract. That will detail the range and pattern of duties that they will be expected to undertake, the shift durations, the type of shifts, the start and finish times. That isn't an operational rota, which will have been drawn up separately by your department using the rota template of the generic work schedule. It will also include some training opportunities.
So you will need to meet your trainee as soon as possible, preferably within the first 2 weeks of them starting in your department. And the personalised work schedule is a joint responsibility, so you shouldn't be expecting them to know everything, and likewise they shouldn't be expecting you to deliver everything either. And your role as education supervisor, as always, is that the learning needs specific to their role is crucially important. At the foundation level, the curriculum is very clear, and their learning objectives and training opportunities should be clearly laid out in their timetable so that you both understand if they are progressing appropriately through their time with you. So the opportunities and support in this post are a joint decision, and it's important that they don't miss out on those due to service commitment. So it's important as a new terminology that the generic work schedule is not an operational rota. That is new terminology that you will come to grasps with.
So when you've met with your trainee, you will have turned the generic work schedule into a personalised work schedule. That might also include other responsibilities they might have, for example, being a representative or having less than full-time training. And that then becomes the personalised work schedule that they will be doing for the placement. Now, the situation as to what a trainee is actually working compared to the personalised work schedule is monitored using exception reporting now. Diary carding is out and exception reporting is in. What we have asked the trainees to do is to report any exceptions from their personalised work schedule to their clinical supervisor, not their educational supervisor in foundation only. And the reason for that is that it's quite possible that an educational supervisor might be in psychiatry, might be even outside of the trust, and they wouldn't have the in-depth knowledge to know around the circumstances of working in a particular department, general medicine, emergency department, etc. If a trainee experiences significant or regular deviation from a work schedule on the basis of hours of work or breaks, then that is a safety issue, and I, as the Guardian of Safe Working, would have oversight of that situation.
And I would be also monitoring the number of exception reports coming through about their learning opportunities and missing either clinics or other opportunities that they have in their rota that they don't actually gain. So this is something that as DME I will be monitoring.
So a number of people have said to me, what is a significant deviation from a work schedule? And there is no definition in the new contract of exactly what would be deemed to be significant. What might be significant for one trainee might not be significant for another. And what might be significant on one night might not be significant on another. It would really depend on their personal circumstances. So it's up to the trainee to decide what they consider to be a significant deviation. So how will it be reported? There is a web-based system called real-time rostering, and you will be receiving an email shortly as a clinical or educational supervisor so that you're aware of the system and you will have a login details for that system. Trainees will need to report every individual incident. They're not able to complete a report saying, I worked late 4 nights last week. They would need to complete a report for each incident. So bundling of these is not permitted. So they would need to put in a little bit about the circumstances around the incident. Then we've also asked them to nominate the rota that they were working on at the time. So if, for example, they missed their lunch during general medicine, then they would choose their general medicine foundation rota. If, on the other hand, they left late 2 hours after a hospital at night rota, then they would pick the hospital at night. They're also required to put in the name of their named clinical supervisor, and they should be able to do that from a drop-down list. If there are any problems with a trainee experiencing completing an exception report, then they should contact myself or the Human Resources Department, and I'll give you the email at the end of this podcast. So this is the web-based version, and you can see a trainee there has completed 5 exception reports, a mixture of both training and safety exception reports. And they can be seen both by the trainee, their named clinical supervisor, and also by Claire or myself. And they will receive their login details shortly. If you have not received your login details by the first Wednesday in December, then please do contact me if you think you fulfil one of these roles as named clinical supervisor or educational supervisor.
So it's very important that we respond in a timely manner, and we've asked the trainees, or it is expected of the trainees, in fact, for them to report their exception reports certainly within 14 days of an event. And that's an absolute limit, but if they think it's going to be a payment that is required, then they need to put the exception report within 7 days, and if there are safety concerns, then certainly within 48 hours. Once that has occurred, then you as educational or named clinical supervisor would be sent a report of that exception. And a copy would be sent to the Guardian of Safe Working, ROS, if it's about hours, and to myself as Director of Medical Education if there were some issues about the training and a lack of training.
So once the report has been submitted, you need to have a discussion with your trainee, and that might be a telephone call, it might be a face-to-face meeting, it might be Skype, however is most convenient for the two of you. The supervisor needs to investigate the report and decide on what should be done. If it's a question of additional hours, then there is the option of either time off in lieu or payment, and your department might have some local guidance for you on how to achieve that. I think if time off in lieu were to be awarded, then it should be awarded in a timely manner, and we should arrange for that time off in lieu to be taken at least within 1 month of the exception report and the agreement of that action.
If a trainee has been taken away from an educational opportunity, for example a clinic, then it's important that that opportunity is gained within the next 2 weeks. So this is not about payment, this is about ensuring that they meet their curriculum requirements by appropriate amount of time within their working hours in the appropriate educational opportunities.
The supervisor also needs to decide if this exception report is a one-off or if in fact it forms part of a pattern and is likely to recur either with this trainee or with other trainees on the same rota. You need to document the agreed response on the exception reporting, but the documentation process gives us an audit trail of what has happened. But it would also be a good idea, I think, to inform your faculty or rota lead to ensure that they can deliver the time off in lieu or payment is arranged, and also for your department to monitor any costs incurred as a result of this process. The system will not automatically notify a trainee's educational supervisor if the clinical supervisor is the person nominated in the report. So it's important that there's an agreement between yourself and the trainee as to who's going to contact the educational supervisor, so they're just in the know about what's happening. And so, as named clinical supervisor, you'll see you can log into the system, see a number of reports by a single trainee. You can see your other trainees and whether they've had any reports. And you can look into individual exception reports and see what action has been agreed when. Trainees can likewise then approve the report, and it is then closed and the system is logged. As the Guardian of Safe Working, I have a dashboard looking at all the exception reports across the Trust. I can say we haven't had this many in obstetrics and gynecology, which is the only department currently running this system as they transitioned onto the new contract in October. So as the named clinical supervisor, you will either have an exception report as a result of an exception working in a specialty or in the hospital at night. If it's a result of hospital at night, then time off in lieu is not permitted. If it's as a result of working in the department during the day, then there is an opportunity for either a training opportunity in lieu or a time off in lieu or payment as agreed by yourself in line with the departmental guidance. So if it's a one-off, then that would be the end of the situation. If on the other hand it's part of a pattern, then you need to undertake what's called a level 1 work schedule review, which sounds daunting, but in fact a level 1 work schedule review really is just looking at the rota and the circumstances and the organisation and saying what needs to be done to prevent this happening again. That might be a rota change, for example, moving a shift so that it starts an hour later and finishes an hour later, or it might be an organisational change, such as a clinic having fewer patients or a handover occurring half an hour earlier. The implications may be for an individual trainee or maybe for a group of trainees on a rota. That will be dependent on the actual work schedule review results. If the trainee is unhappy and does not think that that work schedule review will prevent further occurrences of this particular exception, they can request a level 2 work schedule review. During that, nominees of the Director of Medical Education and the Guardian of Safe Working would help and get involved to see what additional things would need to be implemented to prevent a recurrence. A level 3 review is basically the same as a grievance procedure was in the old contract, and let's hope we're not going to get that far.
You may come across a trainee who seems to be creating more reports or is finding it difficult to do the work within the timetable provided, and maybe the timetable that other trainees flourish in. So we do need to look at the workload of an individual trainee and make sure that, first of all, that they're not working excessively compared to their colleagues, and if they are struggling within the time frame, not to give them more money for more time to do the same amount of work, but perhaps support the trainee with an appropriate work schedule for them. and make sure that appropriate support is put in there. So this is your role as an educational leader to ensure that we have the right educational environment for each of our individual trainees.
So if a trainee works excess hours, more than 48 hours a week over a rota cycle, or more than 72 hours in any 7-day period, or has less than 8 hours rest between 2 shifts, then that's a situation in which the Guardian of Safe Working can levy fines on a department. The fines will be levied at 4 times the hourly rate that was applicable at the time the exception occurred, and the trainee would keep 1.5 times, and 2.5 times would go into a central reserve pot administered by the Guardian of Safe Working. Likewise, if meal breaks were missed on a large number of occasions, then fines could be levied that would go into the same pot. So, the contract requires for a junior doctors forum to be set up to scrutinise the disbursement of these fines. And I think this forum is very key to engaging with our trainees and helping them to work with us to prevent any unsafe working or any poor training that is occurring.
So the Junior Doctor Forum is very important for the organisation to work in a positive way. We do not want to see this forum just to be set up to dole out fines and to know what to do with the money. It's really to ensure that our trainees have the right educational environment. That means that they are not tired, that they are fed and have appropriate refreshment, and also that they are allowed to develop and to take on the educational opportunities that flourish here at Guy's and St Thomas's. So we do encourage our junior doctors to participate in the Junior Doctor Forum. We have got space on the foundation numbers, and we would want you to support your doctors to be part of this forum to ensure that we create an appropriate environment for everybody.
So the Guardian of Safe Working then oversees the safe working of junior doctors and monitors the exception reporting process and chairs the Junior Doctors Forum. I have overall responsibility for safety and some equality and diversity issues within the contract. I'm not responsible for devising your rota or deciding about payment issues, and Claire is responsible for training. I'm required to write a quarterly report to the Trust Board on the safety of doctors' working hours, including exception reports. And I'll also be looking to your department to report rota gaps. It's really gaps in having fewer men on the ground manning a rota that can result in a number of issues of safe working. And so we will be monitoring that and looking for plans to resolve any gaps, which I know can be very challenging in some departments. The report is not only sent within the Trust, but to monitoring organisations in the wider NHS. So it's very important that we understand and have a common nomenclature on what is a gap in the rota. So a gap in the rota is basically a vacant slot. If you find some staff bank shifts to fill a rota, then that still is a gap, because there could be pressure on trainees within that rota to take on that additional work. If, on the other hand, you engage a trust grade member of staff with a contract to undertake work within a rota, then that is not a gap. Internal cover should be paid separately through staff bank, and that would then avoid an exception report. It's not possible to just shuffle trainees around on a rota to get them to take up the slack in the system created by a gap.
So I need to see each of the rotas that are changed to ensure that there are educational opportunities within each of the rotas. And in that way we can make sure that individuals can see where they should be getting their learning opportunities, and they can see that the potential for the post and their development according to the curriculum. And I will be making sure that there are minimum opportunities for each trainee. I would like you to obviously deliver more than the minimum. So the accountability, if the training plan is not delivered, is mine, and I need to look at the educational exception reports to make sure that a department is offering the appropriate environment for our junior doctors to flourish and develop. The large role for the education supervisor and the named clinical supervisor is new and is quite daunting, and I would suggest that this is not too different to what you do already. You should understand already the weekly pattern of work that your junior doctors are undertaking, and you should understand where the stresses are in their time and in their training. So the exception reports you will get sent to you as a named clinical supervisor in a department for foundation doctors, and to work with the junior doctor the best way to resolve those issues. And the work schedule reviews to look at what is actually happening and the changes that need to occur if a rota is not compliant with the appropriate operational and junior doctor contract issues.
So what have we learned so far? Obstetrics and gynecology went onto the new rota in October 2016, and we've learned that good communication is really key. The exception reporting process and documenting it on the DRS system is not a replacement for good communication with your trainees and using them and understanding what their solutions as well as their issues are. It is an opportunity for positive change, and this has really been the result in obstetrics and gynecology for the moment, in that people have understood what the key issues are for trainees and have sought solutions together and come together as a department, as a faculty and as trainees to work together to improve the safety of junior doctors working and their ability to deliver good and safe patient care. So really a combined approach in the department is what I would encourage. I would find that the obstetrics and gynecology department have encouraged exception reporting amongst their trainees to feel they are in touch with what is happening on the ground. The Trust has produced a junior doctor's contract, which gives a lot of the information that we have talked about today, and also gives trainees some details around payments and what to expect on their payslip. So if they have any queries on that front, the handbook will be a good place to point them to. If you have any questions about what we've discussed today, then do contact Claire or myself on our email addresses that you're seeing on the screen.